Welcome to the Oshawa Community Museum podcast with your host, Melissa Cole.
Hello, this is Melissa Cole, curator of the Oshawa Community Museum. Thank you for joining me again today for our monthly podcast series. Today I'm going to talk about another one of our treasured artifacts, a set of stone hooking tongs that came from the schooner Helen. On the evening of September 20th, 1921, an era of nautical history abruptly came to an end when the schooner Helen ran aground off McLaughlin Point. The Helen began her life some 51 years earlier as a tow barge J.J. Pugsley. In 1872, she was acquired by John Gouldring, who was to captain her for the next 5 decades. At 70 feet long and 30 feet wide and sporting 2 masts, the Helen hardly appeared revolutionary. However, a close inspection would reveal that she was the first Great Lakes schooner to be fitted with an auxiliary combustion engine, an innovation which, according to one marine historian, was as far in the future as a flying machine. As futuristic as Helen may have been, she spent the vast majority of her years as a stone hooker, a type of schooner specifically designed to lift stones from the lake bed and transport them to shore where they would be used in the construction of new harbors, docks, and roadways. From approximately 1850 to 1900, it was not uncommon for entire fleets of stone hookers to be operating on Lake Ontario. Of the hundreds built, only one stone hooker, and that was the Helen, remained in service past 1920. So how did the stone hookers manage to get these large boulders into their vessels? Well, by anchoring the hooker close to a boulder-strewn reef, the crew would pole or scull a flat-bottomed scow into the reef's shallows. When the bottom was visible from the surface, a 2-pronged implement called a stone rake was manipulated under a fair-sized boulder. This would be hauled to the surface and piled on the scow. Once loaded to capacity, the scow would return to the anchored schooner, and the hard heads transferred into the vessel's hold. This back-breaking task continued until the schooner had a full cargo of stone. Then, usually with very little free board and the heavily laden scow in tow, the vessel would sail to one of the many lakeshore communities where harbors and docks were being constructed to attract trade and commerce into their areas. This large set of stone tongs, which are similar to ice tongs, was installed by John Gouldring. He thought this method would be a little more versatile since he was the only crew member on his vessel. These stone tongs would be lowered overboard from a pulley block attached to the boom. Very large boulders could be lifted and swung safely into the vessel's now deckless hold. This device proved to be far superior to the scow and stone rake method previously described in this article, and was still used by most of the stone hookers. Soon, however, the fateful day came for Helen, and on the 20th day of September 1921, she was heading home to Bonhead, Newcastle with a full load of stones, when a strong gale forced her to crash against a large rock off of McLaughlin Point, which had been appropriately named Oshawa Island. Captain Gouldring, who was alone aboard the ship, managed to escape before his command of 49 years sunk beneath the murky depths. The Helen was the 3rd ship to meet her demise on Oshawa Island that year. The rotting hull of Helen lay undisturbed and forgotten until 1964, when a local diver, Robert Stevenson, set out to locate the famous schooner. Stevenson spent a total of 200 hours underwater, recovering such artifacts as Helen's steering wheel, her 10-foot-tall oak rudder, cast iron propeller, and John Gouldring's clay smoking pipe. Many of these items were donated to the Oshawa Community Museum and now are on display in our most recent exhibition, the Sea Shanty exhibit, exploring Oshawa's relationship with Lake Ontario. I do hope you can come down and join us and visit this exhibition, featuring some of Oshawa's ships that were also built here locally. We hope to see you soon this summer. Thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking with you again on our next monthly podcast.